This is the number one question I get asked. Last week, I did a YouTube and I also did an email on this subject. And I thought it was important enough that I wanted to include this as a podcast as well. So the number one question I get asked is, how do I find finance to do my deal? And last week, that was the subject of a YouTube, an email, as I mentioned, and it was from Dan's seminar where he describes a 60-40 model. So I am going to include that right now in a podcast so that you can have it as well. So there's no excuse to not know how to do it. It's been an email, it's been in a YouTube, and now it's in a podcast. It's been a while since Dan's done a Castle seminar. And this August 2021 is a good one. So if you are still wondering how to do QLA and whether or not it works, listen to this series of seminars that Dan's doing. In particular, I get asked a lot about what's required to do QLA, what's required to do it successfully. And this day 4 part 3 answers one of the biggest questions that I get. How do you actually finance a deal? How do you structure it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to include a clip from it. If you want to watch the whole seminar video, go back and look at the day 4 part 3. But this is an important one. And if you take a look at boiling QLA down, yes, you want to follow all the steps. You want to get a dream team. You want to get your professionals on a success-oriented deferred fee basis. You want to have financial institutions. Most importantly, you want to work seller finance, and that's what in part the 60-40 talks about. But if you do all of those things, the keys to QLA: follow the steps, find a motivated seller, don't spend your time trying to convince someone who doesn't want to sell, and then take massive action. Very, very simple, really. And I say that a lot. The QLA is simple, but simple is not the same as easy. And I want to give you an example from one of the groups that I mentor in. A person by the name of Deborah. Last week we had our call. She said she made 400 calls to acquisition targets. Some of those were quick. Some of those were call me back. The person's not in right now, but we'll be back in next Thursday at 2. Some of them were longer than that. But 400 calls. Sounds like a lot, but if you sit down, work a target list, and start working through it, you can do 400 calls in a week more easily than you can. But I did ask her, how do you keep track of those 400 people? That's hard. You can't remember, at least I can't, 400 people in a week. She said, oh, well, I've got a book. I think she's got it alphabetized. And she goes through and writes down when the call was, with whom it was, some notes about the call, so that when they talk again, she can refer back, refresh her recollection, and know what went on in that call. She said she carries that with her everywhere. If she's in the grocery store, who knows? They might call while I'm in the grocery store, so she can refer to the book. I asked her if she slept with it under her pillow. She said, yeah, in fact, I do sleep with it. They might call in the night too. But think about that. A lot of people, when they say, well, QLA is not working for me. How many calls did you make? Well, I didn't make any this week, or I made 1 or 2. Compare that to 400 calls. When you are making 400 calls, assuming that you've got a reasonable amount of skill and you've got a good deal, you will make some good things happen. But one of the most important things is how you structure eventually that deal. And I want to include the clip I mentioned here because Dan talks about a 60-40 model where you're acquiring 60%, can be 51%, but majority interest. And then you're leaving the balance with the seller. And that gives you the ability, if you can control 100% of the cash flow, to have a really good debt coverage ratio. You can also use this if you want to purchase 100% of the business. But there's some advantages of only purchasing 60 and leaving 40 in this example back with the sellers, and Dan talks about that. So this is an important one. Go listen to it again if you want to listen to the whole video or this whole series. It's the August 2020, the first one in August, and this is the day 4 part 3. But make sure you follow the steps. If you, there's plenty of free materials on my site. There's plenty of free materials on Dan's site. I did do a deep dive boot camp. The recordings of that are available now. That's on my website as well, which shows you how to do the steps, templates, scripts, et cetera, et cetera. But this 60-40 model is an important one. So pay attention. If you've wondered about how to do it, this will give you a good explanation of it. Just remember, don't jump to doing a deal first. Go through the hard work of building a dream team, getting your professionals, and to do the prep work to get your team ready before you step onto the field. That's the number one problem that I see in people that want to do QLA, is they want to jump to doing a deal before they're ready and have done the work to prepare themselves for that.
When you're doing the 60-40 finance...
60-40.
Yeah, when you're doing that finance...
No. It's not okay. It's a rollover equity. You're talking about the rollover equity where the doctors keep the 40.
Yeah, but you go to the bank and you finance that 60%, right?
Correct. In fact, the cute thing is when you're interviewing the banks, they'll tell you 80-20, 70-30. So then when you go with a 60-40 deal, they go, oh, fuck, this is well within our parameters. And you got them hooked. Legally. Yeah.
Let's assume they say cash flow only has to cover that 60, or which part of the cash flow, 100%, or that 60% of the cash flow has to cover that 60%?
No. Okay. The 100% of the cash flow has to cover the 60% of the debt service, which is a slam dunk, even for you meatheads. Verstehen? What even makes it better is, unless the deal is really, really rancid, ugly fucking deal, the 60% of the cash, the 100% of the cash flow will always cover the 60% of the debt service. You got to really get a raunchy deal. Do you understand me? You got to get a really raunchy deal for it not to cover. Everybody verstehen raunchy, ugly. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm going to describe it a different way. I think you're saying the right thing. But no, you're not leaving it. You're not buying it from him. Yes, sir. No. And you agree on exit. I don't like the, Jason says 3-year exit. I like 5-year exit because I like some room. So, but at the end of 3 years, the contract, you will either exercise that and you will buy them out at that strike price that you agreed 3 years before, or you may roll them again. You may roll them again. They may like the deal. They may want to stay. You may roll them again. And I assure you, if they stay in the deal, and the deal about when you're buying up practices, when you've already, once you get your first one, and you got a practice, let's say there's a practice owned by 3 doctors, and you bought 60%, they kept 40. When you go to the next deal, and oh, by the way, these 3 doctors are still in our deal. Oh. And then when you go to the 10th or 12th one and you got 80 doctors that own the 40%, it's just like taking candy from a baby. Because they will presuppose the doctors must be happy because they stayed. They won't presuppose the doctors are brain dead. It is a thing of beauty. It is. And back in the day, the Onassis people used to buy ships this way. They'd buy 60%, finance it. The old ship owners would keep 40%. It was like a pinball machine that you pulled back and it was registering wins all the way around. So everybody get that. I mean, it's beautiful. And virtually nobody, even the meatheads on fucking YouTube, because they don't understand because they're retarded, will compete with you. No, I mean nobody.
Okay, so if you have any questions or comments or ideas for future episodes, please email bruce@brucewhipple.com. And if you're not already on our mailing list, head over to brucewhipple.com and sign up. and grab any of the free reports. That'll put you on the mailing list. There is a lot of free information you can use to acquire already profitable businesses. This is Bruce Whipple. Thanks for listening to the Business Acquisition Podcast. And remember, you miss 100% of the opportunities you failed to take. And procrastination truly is the thief of time. So do something today, please. Your future self will be proud of you.